boy. You can hear that sputtering. Hear that? Rich bog versus lean bog. How do you tell the difference? It kind of had to clear out. It's definitely not sputtering as much as it was full throttle. You would think that a brand new bike like this would not need any tuning. It should run great from the showroom floor, right? Well, customer brought this in and it's not running well. It's running super rich. He said it's fouling plugs. It's dripping oil down the silencer like crazy. I'm gonna ride this quick, then we're gonna start diagnosing it, and I'm gonna break it down step by step so that's easy for you to understand, even if you've never tuned a car before. All right, so this is a cold start. I haven't even heard the bike run, has maybe 2 hours on it. Premix is mixed up. It's running 32-to-1 AMSOIL Interceptor with 91 non-oxy, no ethanol fuel, and says we're pretty sure it's running really rich. I'm not even gonna use the choke. Slowly kick it over here. 1, 2, 3. Thought it'd start by now. 4, 5. Okay, let's turn the choke on. 1. There we go. Oh boy. Sounded like it was flooded over maybe. Warm up for a minute here. One thing I'm noticing right now, it's pretty smoky. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but excessive smoke. Some people think that, oh, you're using too much oil in the mix. Well, for these 85s that rev really high, you want a lot of oil. So 32-to-1, it's definitely not too much. The excessive smoke is usually due to rich jetting, not too much oil. It can be caused by that, but at least that's from my experience. You can hear that sputtering. Kind of has to clear out. All right, now I want to listen to it idle. Hear that? That is what I call a bog, but when people hear bog, they typically think, oh, it's running too lean, a lean bog. But in this case, there's a subtle difference in sound. Rich bog versus lean bog. How do you tell the difference? Well, a lean bog, it sounds like the engine is dying, like you're hitting the kill switch. Whereas a rich bog, at least right off of idle, it kind of sounds a little bit more like it's drowning out and then gets on it. It's more of a hesitation than the engine is dying. So lean bog is where rich bog is kind of like it's like a stutter or hesitation and then goes. It sounds like there's too much fuel being gargled in the engine and it's trying to clear it out, and then you see that puff of smoke. We're gonna focus on one specific jet, and I'll show you how I know where to start jetting in just a minute. Yeah, so it has good throttle response. You can whack the throttle right off of idle and it's not gonna kill it. If it was too lean, it would die out when I'd go if it died out like unless I let off the throttle, that would mean that it's too lean. But since I can go from just above idle, whack the throttle, second, third gear, and it still goes without dying, that means it's too rich if anything. One of the most common questions I get and things that makes jetting so frustrating, at least if you're new to it, is where do you start? I mean, how do you know what to start looking at when you know that the jetting is too rich or too lean? Well, in order to save time, I'd say for me, it depends on what the symptom is and what the bike history is. Since I know everything's brand new, everything should be perfect, nothing should be worn out, broken inside. The first thing that I'm gonna do, or that I check, is one of 3 jet circuits. Now on a 2-stroke carb and pretty much any dirt bike carb, I narrow the jetting down to 3 main jet circuits. That covers 80 to 90% of jetting problems. You got the pilot jet circuit, needle, and main jet. The one that I start with is going to be the pilot jet circuit, because that is the most important for starting, idling, low RPM throttle response. For this one, fouling plugs and likely causing the spooge or the oil leaking down the silencer. So we'll look at the pilot jet circuit first. However, you don't want to just jump to changing pilot jets, because there's a fine tuning adjustment of the pilot jet, and that is the air screw. Okay, you can see it's a flat blade brass screw. That'll tell you whether the pilot jet is too big, too small, or just right. And I'll explain that more in just a minute. Now, if you want to learn how to dial in your air screw or fuel screw if you have a 4-stroke in just a few minutes without guessing, I got a free guide. You can grab that in the description below. With that said, even though that's the first jet circuit I want to start with, there's one more thing that I want to check before that, and that is the float height. Right here, this is where all the fuel goes into the carb. Well, on the other side, fuel goes into the float bowl, and the float goes up as the fuel goes up, and it stops whenever the fuel gets to a certain level. So if the float level is too high or too low, there's going to be too much or not enough fuel in there. That is going to affect all of the jet circuits. So if there's not enough fuel because the float height is too low, that means all of the jet circuits are going to be too lean. They're not getting enough fuel, and vice versa. If it's too high, all the jet circuits are going to be too rich. You want to make sure that the fuel's on. You want fuel going into the float bowl, and since there is an overflow line, you just want to pay attention to when it starts leaking out of that. And I've found that on most carbs, if it leaks out around 45 or 50 degrees, that means the float height is in a good position. It's at the right float level. Now, if you have to tip it over more than that, say 60, 70 degrees, that means the float height is too low. But if you only have to tip it over 20 or 30 degrees, or maybe even just leaning it over on the kickstand or the side stand and it's leaking out the overflow, that means the float level is too high. They got the fuel on. We're going to start leaning it over slowly, watching for fuel to leak out the overflow. Nothing yet, nothing yet. And, oh, and there I see it. So that is pretty close to 45 degrees. That means I'll work on the first pilot jet circuit, which is, let me rephrase that. I'll work on the first jet circuit that I always do, which is the pilot jet. But before changing pilot jets, you want to get the air screw dialed in. Before making any changes to the air screw, you need to know where you're starting at. Turn it in, counting the turns, half, 1, 1.5, 2, it was 2 turns out. So we got it all the way in, we'll go half a turn out. Now, how do you know what the air screw is actually doing, whether you're going richer or leaner? Well, on most 2-stroke carbs that have an air screw, which is on the side of the carb and generally towards the air box side, it's called an air screw because it's allowing more air into the pilot jet circuit. That's making the jet circuit leaner. More air equals leaner. Turning it in closes that air screw, making it richer. It's not going to be a huge difference, but it should be noticeable because it's going from 2 turns out to half a turn out. That's 1.5 turns. That's a pretty big adjustment on the air screw. If you have to open the throttle to kickstart it easily, that's a sign that it's running too rich, especially on the pilot jet circuit or the air screw. So I'll kick it over, not touching the throttle. Well, you can have it on there, just don't open it. And wow, it actually did start without touching the throttle. I'm surprised. something I noticed, it wasn't a big difference. If you're new to carb tuning, you'd be like, oh, looks like the same thing. Even though it started easily without touching the throttle, the idle was close to the same, but when I revved it up, it came back down and idled a little bit lower, and then it kind of slowly came back up. That's a sign that it's getting too much fuel. And when I let it idle for that 5 or 10 seconds and I revved it up, it was kind of, it kind of had to clear out. And the longer it idles or riding at low RPM, the spark plug will foul out if you don't clear it out every so often. You could tell by how much smoke was pouring out of it when I let it idle and then revved it out. This is at half a turn out, the richest setting. Now we're gonna go to 3 turns out, which is the leanest setting. 1 half, 2 half, 3 turns out. Not gonna touch the throttle. Okay, now it doesn't even want to idle. Maybe because there's too much fuel still left in it. I'll open up the throttle a little bit while starting, help clear it out. All right, yeah, I'm already noticing a difference in the sound of how it's idling. So if you pay attention to here, listen to that ting, 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 ting. That's a good sound, a better sound. The idle doesn't drop down as much as it did. We'll rev it up here. Yeah, that's definitely better. I didn't have to clear it out. It wasn't sputtering from being loaded up with too much fuel after idling. So I let it idle here. Let's clear it out, or see if it needs clearing out. Okay, so yeah, it did need a little bit of clearing out, but it was a noticeable difference. A little less smoke, not as much. So going from half a turn to 3 turns out, that made a noticeable difference in the idle, in the smoke, and how clean it revved. But going back to how do you know what size pilot jet you need? Well, I don't even know what size pilot jet is in here yet, but just dialing in that air screw tells me where to go. You say, well, how so? Doing those 2 tests back to back, we know where it runs better. It's not running perfect yet, but we know it's where it's running better, and that is when the air screw is at 3 turns out. Theoretically, we'd want to keep turning the, we're out of battery. That means theoretically, we'd want to keep backing that air screw out until it does run best. But since we're already at 3 turns out, I don't want to go any more than that because you risk the air screw falling out. So what that tells us is it wants more air, less fuel, which means we need a smaller pilot jet. All the pilot and main jet do, they just control how much fuel is going through them. It's as simple as that. You want less fuel, go to a smaller size jet. You want more fuel, you go to a bigger size jet. But how do you know if you should go down 1 size, 2 size, 3 sizes? Good question. For the pilot jet, if it was perfect, if it was running perfect at 3 turns out, I would only go 1 size down on the pilot jet. But since I know that it's better, but it's still not perfect, I want to go even more on the air screw. Theoretically, I'm going to go 2 sizes, because if I went just 1 size smaller, I might be able to get it just right, but just from experience, I'm probably going to have it set at 2.5 or 3 turns out to get it just right, because it's still too rich with this one. So now we can pull the pilot jet out, and that can be done without even removing the carb. I could set this up in my little shop, but I want to show you how easy this is. You can do it even on the trail. So first you need to turn the fuel off. You take the float bowl plug out, and you can put a rag down there to try and soak up as much of that fuel as possible. And then you rotate the carb. You want to make sure that the throttle cable isn't binding up top here. That is the main jet, but we're not touching that right now. We want to get access at the pilot jet, and looks like the pilot jet is right there, but we're not going to be able to get that out of there without taking the float bowl off. This air boot is pretty soft, so I'm just going to try and pop the carb out. There we go. The overflow tube is kind of a pain to deal with. Come on now. There we go. All right, so we got the main jet there. Looks like it's a 145. When you're taking the pilot jet out, you always want to make sure you're using the right size screwdriver, because if it's too small, you're likely to strip or round off the head. Wow, that is in there pretty good. I'm actually going to use an even bigger tip than that. There we go. So I think stock, he said, was 52. I don't know. It is not a 52. It's a 45. Okay. So if we went down one size, that would be a 42. But I think we're still going to go down 2 sizes to a 40 if we have one. Because he gave me a 48, and that's bigger, which is richer, which is not what we want. Let me see if I have a 40. I found a 40 pilot jet. It's a Pro X brand. Some people say, oh, only run OEM. And while I agree OEM is the most accurate, consistent, most reliable, I've had really good success with these Pro X jets. And they're like less than half the price. Compared to like a cheap Chinese, Amazon, eBay jet, I would much rather have the Pro X jet. You don't need to get it super tight in there. Just a little bit snug, otherwise you're gonna strip it out or it's gonna be very hard to get off the next time. Got to get everything lined up just so on this smaller PWK. You think that might have something to do with it? Come on, Kelly, pay attention. Oh, my back. This is what happens when I don't use my fancy new stand. All right, we just had to kind of twist it in there. The float tube had to go back first. You just got to play with it. Here we are. Pull the boot back with your right hand. There we go. There's a little spigot on top that fits into the intake boot groove. Oh yeah. Might need to put this drain plug back in. Make sure it's all the way seated in, otherwise you'll have an air leak causing probably bogging and hanging idle. Okay, I've got it seated all the way around both sides. Tighten the clamps back up. You just need to get them snug. If you're starting to round the heads on this or strip them out, it's too tight. Now I can turn the fuel back on. All right, so first test with the 40 pilot. So going from a 45 to a 40, that's 2 steps down. I reset the air screw to 1.5 turns out. So that's about factory standard. We'll see how it starts. I'm not gonna open the throttle. Started easily, 1 kick without touching the throttle. You hear that? Did you notice anything different about that? I noticed that we're definitely getting closer. It's definitely not running as rich, which is a good thing because we went quite a bit leaner. I need to go for another test ride to confirm that, because you can't, it's harder to get true accurate jetting results just revving it on the stand in neutral because there's no load on the engine. But I noticed that it might now be a little bit too lean, which is totally fine. That's why we have the air screw adjustment to play with. But how do I know that? Well, I noticed that it's not smoking as much. The idle is a little bit more consistent. It doesn't go down and then back up after revving it. I noticed that if I let it idle for 5 or 10 seconds and then give it a rev, it doesn't sputter and then clear out because it's not getting too much fuel now. In fact, I noticed that it's starting to bog a little bit right off of idle, especially when I whack open the throttle. That is a sign that it's starting to be too lean on the air screw. And if you think back to when we started, it was bogging as well, but this one is a little bit different. It's very subtle. Before it was kind of it was kind of like a sputter drowning out and then going, where this one is more of a It's very quick and subtle, which means it's only a little bit lean. Now, if I went even more and more lean, it would bog out even more. So the more it bogs out, the leaner it is. And since it only bogs out a little bit, it's probably really close on the jetting. I'm gonna go for a quick test run here. Before the hardcore guys get on me about, oh, if it's fouling plugs and it's running too rich, it's sputtering, you're just not riding it hard enough. What they mean by that is, if you're riding at a low RPM, blah, 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 and it's sputtering a lot, they say that, oh, that's normal. You just gotta ride it harder, meaning you gotta hold the throttle wide open more often. But I don't like that approach. That is, sometimes you can't hold it open, hold the throttle wide open more. Like if you're trail riding, you might have to ride it at a lower RPM longer periods of time. If you're racing motocross, yeah, you can get away with it. But if it's constantly sputtering, you have to clear it out, it's fouling spark plugs, from my experience, that means the jetting is too rich. Maybe bikes were like that back in the 60s, 70s, but modern bikes with modern carburetors, you can dial them in so they're not gonna sputter and foul plugs every time you ride. You can ride at low RPM for minutes or even hours without fouling a plug. I've done it, and you might be thinking, okay, if you go that far lean, well then you're gonna blow the engine up. Well, not from my experience either. If you go too lean on the pilot jet, it's just gonna bog out. Yeah, it might run a little bit hotter. You might spit coolant out of the overflow if you're riding at low RPM. The engine might run a little bit hotter, but you're not gonna blow it up and seize it because it's getting so hot, because the pilot jet is only for idle and low RPM riding. What some people might be thinking about blowing it up is when you're riding at wide open throttle and it's running too lean. Yes, if it's too lean at wide open throttle, you're gonna blow it up in a matter of minutes or even seconds if you're holding it there. But wide open throttle, the pilot jet has very little to nothing to do with the wide open throttle jetting. That has to do with the main jet primarily. And that is why if you go too lean on the pilot jet, you don't have to be so concerned about blowing up the engine. In fact, hang on, I got a timer going here. In fact, my method for tuning in the pilot jet to get easy starts, smooth throttle response, because I like it nice and crisp, not jerky, but crisp, smooth, best power. I like to go as lean as possible, like we're doing right now. Find that line of going too lean where it starts to bog, and then you go back up a little bit so that it doesn't bog anymore. And that is where I find is the most optimal jetting. Whereas the main jet, to reduce the risk of blowing it up, I like to go the opposite, where I go as rich as possible. I hear it sputtering at wide open throttle, and then I step it back down 1 or 2 jets. So enough about my method, let's go for a test ride. Now what I want to test is just putting around at low RPM and then getting on it full throttle to see if I have to clear it out. Because if it's still sputtering after idling at low RPM, it's still a little bit rich, where it could still be the air screw or it could also be the needle clip position. But let's just see. It's definitely not sputtering as much as it was. Let's go second gear, full throttle. You hear that? Now I have mistaken that for being too rich when I was tuning Electron Carb, but that bogging hesitation, that actually might be a little bit too lean. Yeah, it's definitely too lean. So now I want to go richer on the air screw. Let's just go all the way to 3 turns out, see how it runs. So we're at 1.5, we'll go 2.5, 3 turns out. See how it starts, no throttle. Nice and easy. Oh wait. I went the wrong way, sorry. I'm thinking fuel screw 4-stroke. I didn't want to go out, I want to go in to make it richer. Okay, so we're at 3 turns, half a turn. We're only half a turn out. You notice that that bog was even worse. That means it wants more fuel. Yeah, it's better already. That's first gear. Still sounds like it's loading up a little bit, which could be the needle clip position. Okay, let's try second gear, full throttle. Yeah, that's definitely better. The air screw pretty close. I might try leaning it out half a turn, see if it still doesn't bog. Yeah, it's not bogging anymore, even full throttle. Okay, maybe there's a tiny bit. So the question is, do I want to go to a bigger pilot jet? Because that means if I'm at half a turn, I can't go really in anymore, but I can go out, meaning it wants more fuel. So if I want to have adjustment both ways, I go up to from the 40, which it has now, to the 42, and then I redial in that air screw, and it'd probably be between that 1 and 2 turns out. However, it's not the warmest day out right now. It's maybe 65, and it's only going to get warmer in Minnesota, plus higher humidity, so it's going to run richer. So I may actually leave the 40 in there, because it's only going to get richer from here on out, unless he's riding this in the winter, which I'm guessing it's not. But the next thing, I want to dial in that needle clip position, because it still seems a little bit rich. You have to clear it out a little bit, and I'm thinking the needle clip is causing that, because the needle controls roughly 1/4 turn to 3/4 throttle. So basically just above idle or low to mid-range RPM. This should be even easier, and then rotate the top of the carb towards you, push down on the cable, and then you got the needle. It is an NAPG needle. I'm guessing that's stock. 5 clip positions, and it's in the 4th position from the top, which is almost as rich as it can go. If you lowered the clip to the bottom, that would raise the needle to make it richer. So if you want to make it leaner, you raise the clip, which lowers the needle. Let's go 2 clip positions. So we're going to go from the 4th from the top all the way up to the 2nd from the top. Find a hard surface. It's very easy to lose, and then just slide it into the 2nd position. Make sure the clip is in all the way around. Now I can put it back into the throttle slide. You can see it go through there. There's a little cavity. Carefully put it back in the carb. And when you push it in, you do not want to force it. If it gets stuck like right there, it's because the needle is not going down through the needle jet. If you start to round it, that's too tight. Now I can rotate this carb and tighten up the clamps. So what am I going to be paying attention for now? Well, since I went 2 clip positions leaner, I'm just going to be listening for a bog that's worse. See how it starts. Still starts first kick without throttle. That's good. Whoa. Okay. And that is why you keep a finger on the clutch. So what happened there, do you think? Man, do I even want to keep this in the video? That's a rookie mistake. I thought it was just the throttle cable got binded right here, but it feels like maybe even the throttle cable came loose. Well, I pulled this off and I noticed that the cable, it wasn't fully seated in that little groove like there. So I think it was kind of pulling up. It was a little bit loose in there, kind of sticking. Let this be a lesson to you, boys and girls. This was 100% a mistake of mine. I'm not gonna make excuses. It should have been something I was paying attention to, but I just got caught up in trying to film the video and trying to get this done. But I need to make sure that what I'm doing, triple checking if I have to, that everything is functioning 100% safe and proper. I should have done a throttle test, blip in the throttle just to make sure. I should have double checked just looking at it, making sure it was in the groove. It's not that hard to do this stuff, but it is easy to make a mistake. So I don't want you to be scared that, oh, just because I'm gonna touch it, I'm gonna break it. No, mistakes can happen, as you just saw, but if you just take your time, pay attention, and test everything before you go full throttle like I did. Otherwise, bad things can happen. Got the carb back together. Let's test that throttle. That looks better to me. Full throttle, returns nice and properly. Let's try this again. Seems to be a little cleaner. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Seems to be a little bit more crisp. Pretty much dialed in now. Only thing left is a woods test. Me and my other helmet. Oh, no. It's still a little bit lean. I think we might need to go to that 42 Pilot. Yeah, let's do that. Oh yeah, I wanted to go to 2 turns out 2 with the 42 Pilot jet. Let's go to 2nd gear. I'm used to having more low-end torque. But boy, does it get going when you get on the pipe. Test out that bog. Let's try 3rd gear. Yeah, that's pretty good. This thing has no sputtering. If you found this video helpful and would like to get more help from me, there's a couple ways you can do that. One, through this local service, Fager Power Sports. It's the local carb tuning for dirt bikes specifically. I want to make your bike running right so that it's more reliable and easier to ride, because I'm all about having confidence, and if your bike isn't running right, it's hard to be confident on it. Otherwise, you can get started learning how to do it yourself with my free air or fuel screw tuning guide. Learn how to do that in just a few minutes like I did on this bike here. Links to those are in the description below. I'm Kelly Fagan from MX Hideout. Stop surviving, start riding.